you don't really care about the people you're talking about. They try once again to have characters and give them a lot of dialogue for some reason.
Easily the worst part of the game is its weak narrative.
Little nuance and few hidden agendas from its interesting but underdeveloped characters.
The lack of really caring about the story.
Stupid cliche storyline. None of this makes sense.
And entertainingly cliche villains.
Nobody is gonna remember this story, nor any of its characters in T-minus a few days after playing, okay?
That's the fact.
Dying Light from the get-go was single-handedly killed by us. When the reviews first came out for Dying Light, we were coming off the band train of The Last of Us. One of the best games of all time with a masterfully crafted story that probably had no right being as good as it was. Even though The Last of Us came out 3 years earlier, it became the expectation for story games everywhere, and everyone was craving the next Last of Us, with the hopes that Dying Light, being another zombie game, will be the next masterpiece. But it fell so utterly flat in the story department, everyone was too busy talking about what wasn't there to realize what was. So the story fell flat in Dying Light 1, but can Dying Light 2 fix what Dying Light didn't have and also keep what makes the first one so good? Dying Light 2 takes place
20 years fucking later?
taking that page right out of The Last of Us. Following the events of Dying Light 1, in which Carl Crane is infected with the new strain of the virus via this bitch, he then spreads it throughout the world. You then play as Aiden Cadwell, a freelance runner who handles odd jobs and tasks for citizens. On the surface, it sounds like we are a mirror image of Carl Crane, but with different reasons for actually being in this new city. See, instead of being sent by the GRE, Umbrella, we were, from the looks of it, created by the GRE, being kidnapped at a young age and tested on like something right out of Stranger Things. Then shit hits the fan, like it always does. We get separated by our sister, Mia, who is also in this facility, and now we are older, and for some reason, we have insomnia. But we hear whispers that our sister is in this city, and so Dying Light begins with the search for our sister. This entire setup sounds so much more wild than Dying Light's more straightforward, gun-ho hero. I mean, don't get me wrong, Carl Crane, he's probably the best part of Dying Light 1, but Aiden just sounds so much better. And it also explains why in the gameplay, we look way more athletic with the jumps almost looking like floaty at times. So pretty much, Aiden's Captain America that sometimes has tentacles shooting out of him. Now, after all I just said, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know if this information is 100% true till the game is fully released. I really hope as well though that they end up linking our past with Carl Crane, which I think they will. We are either related to Carl Crane, which I think is really unlikely but would be cool somehow, or at least we have a bit of him inside us, because my guess is the person's DNA they were using to run these experiments was most likely Carl Crane's, because the entire reason this infection even started was because of the GRE trying to make super soldiers or some shit. Kinda similar to the reason the T-virus was created in Resident Evil, but that's all a theory, so let's take that with a grain of salt and not take it to heart, because I'm unsure of that as well. From the gameplay, we also saw snippets of us being able to make our own decisions and choose from a list of dialogue choices. How fleshed out and how this will impact the story, we have no idea. But from the looks of it, it will only affect the world and the story around all the characters you meet, and not affect the overall arcing story and the end goal, if you get what I mean. But if it does affect the overall story, it can work. We have seen it in a lot of games. The biggest ones being the Telltale games, the Quantic Dream games, and Supermassive games. But the difference between those games and Dying Light is those games are solely created around the mechanic of choose your own adventure. Whereas the Dying Light 2, it seems like a feature. But don't get me wrong, plenty of games have done it right with just a feature. For example, if you look at The Witcher 3. No, don't look at that game. We don't talk about that game. Yeah, that's what I thought, bitch. Get out. Witcher 3 has a plethora of different choices you can make, which in turn means 3 different major endings, but 36 different variants of the endings. And that's just one example off the top of my head that does this. There's plenty of other games that I could probably think of that do the same thing. That's just the one that's all I can think of right now. So they can certainly do it right. But when I say Dying Light 2 make this choice, I can't help but feel extremely skeptical for this game's story, as I feel like they made this choice because they weren't confident with the story they were telling. So instead they made a lot of different stories to make up for the overall lackluster story. But we just have to see. They might be able to pull it off. We just have to hold our breath, squeeze those bum cheeks tight together, and hope for a great game. That's all from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.